Who's in the NFL here? You? You? How about you, Tim? You, Tim.
This is Charles Barkley, and you're listening to Tim Graham and Friends. Tim, this is your last favor. Anything else is going to cost you.
And now, back to the last person on earth that should have any friends. It's Tim Graham and Friends.
It's Tim Graham and Friends. I am Tim Graham of The Athletic, coming to you from my undisclosed location here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Management and his latest client, who's been added to his portfolio, Jeff Glor. And when we say what Jeff Glor is up to these days, you know, we have some sort of title, right? Everybody has to come with something. And I think that in addition to, of course, Kenmore East graduate, proud Syracuse alum, that we need to say, it's not aspiring author. And that would also be inaccurate, wouldn't it? You are an author. Or do you have to have it does it have to be on bookshelves yet? Where are you?
It has to be.
You're in this space of you've written. What can you tell us, Jeff? Just fill us in on your authorship.
Well, the first book is supposed to come out in early next. It's still going to be a while. It's still going to be like a year.
Okay.
But yeah, we're in the editing process. Yeah, it's been a whole new thing. I'm trying.
Are you an author? I mean, is it official? Can I call you author Jeff Glor?
I would like to, and I've gotten paid for it at this point.
Oh, you're an author. You're an author.
So I think if you get paid for something and you're doing it, you consider yourself that thing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's similar to the conversation I like to have when somebody gets inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When are you a Hall of Famer? Is it when you get voted in and elected, or you go that weekend and get inducted? Is it when you see your bronze bust? Is it when you put on the gold jacket? Because they roll out all kinds of things that make you official. So I think that getting paid and having done it, yes.
I always went by the Stephen King definition. I'm paraphrasing and I'll mess it up, but he said something like, if you've gotten a check and you've cashed that check and it didn't bounce and you used it to pay the light bill because you wrote some words, then I consider you a writer.
I'm a writer.
I mean, I think the definition's broader. I think it's anybody who writes, but maybe you can differentiate between writers and authors.
Well, some people journal and don't get paid for it. Are they writers?
I think they are.
A blogger who does it as a hobby?
I think they are.
Yeah. I like to, when people ask me what I do for a living, I slow roll it because I don't want to just jump into the conversation about, hey, what do you think the Bills are going to do, in their next game? Or, hey, what should they do at receiver? So I slow roll it, and I'll start with, I'm a writer, and the response or the reaction I get is usually people are very impressed. Like, oh, a writer. You don't meet writers that often, right? You're a writer. And then they'll say, well, have you written anything that I would have read? And then I gotta come around to, yeah. Then I used to be, or when I was at the Buffalo News, I would start off by saying I work for the Buffalo News, because then I could be in the press room or driving a truck or whatever. And then they'd say, well, what do you do there? Well, I'm a writer. Oh, well, what do you cover? And then I would say, sports. And then I'd because like at some point I'm hoping the conversation stops. So then I'm not, cornered by this person who then wants to interrogate me on the Bills, what the Bills are going to do in the draft.
I'm impressed by you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you. That's why we have you on, because when I reach out, you jump at the chance to join Tim Graham and Friends. One of the all-time Fs. You're a Hall of Fame F.
Thank you. Thank you.
Capital F.
Yeah, capital F.
This automatic refocus thing, it's still going, isn't it? Well, the people who are listening to this are not going to understand what we're talking about, but Zoom has this I clicked it, automatic framing or whatever. It's really
Jonah has his turned on also.
He
I
does.
do not have mine turned on. Anything that prevents a camera from zooming towards this nose, it's not a particularly large nose, but the nostrils are the problem. And you can get up those nostrils and see some stuff. So I keep mine.
I wonder if I can disable it as we're on. Jonah, you're the expert.
I don't know. I didn't even turn mine on. Just started doing it after the latest Zoom update, and it's sort of helpful at the beginning for framing things,
Hmm.
but I don't like how it moves if you move within the shot.
Yeah.
This is a good time to tell everybody that and to thank them for giving us a rating, for commenting, for liking, for subscribing, all the different things. I had a call to action on last week's episode, and everybody responded very well, very powerfully. Thank you. And the reason I want to bring that up is I believe now our YouTube numbers have surpassed our podcast audio numbers based on one of the metrics I've seen. So more people, I think, are now watching Tim Graham and Friends than they are just listening to it. So when you mentioned, Jeff, for those listening, they are now the minority, and we don't care about them.
Well, I would expect you to say something like that.
Any thoughts on what's going on at CBS News, Jeff?
I have tried I haven't been inside the building in 15 months, Tim. So I can't say that I am going to speak with any authority. Not that anyone wants me to speak with any authority, with any knowledge or authority in all this, but between
You
the
don't think
books,
Page Six is listening to Tim Graham and Friends or watching it on YouTube?
I'm sure they are. Who can miss it? Between the books, the kids, family, trying to stay in shape, everything.
I
I mean,
love
I
the
have a
Sears
small,
portrait, by the way, over your
yeah,
left shoulder.
yeah,
What's the dog's name?
Maple.
Oh.
Anyway, the point is, I have a very small brain, and there's only so much I can process. So, I don't know that I've tried processing a lot of it. I realize there's a lot's going on. That's not a secret. I also don't think it's my, I don't I don't think I should be telling people how to do their jobs, other than you and Jonah
That's
and
welcome.
Fairburn. So I'm gonna respectfully decline.
Understood.
If you want to
That's
ask more, you're more than welcome to, but
No, as a professional interviewer, Jeff, I think I have a pretty good sense as to when to push and when to not push, and I'm going to leave it there. I think that you've said you don't want to discuss it, and that's your right. I'm
it's
not
not that I don't
entitled to
want to
this information.
it's not that I don't want to discuss it. I just don't know that I can offer anything that's all that important right now.
You said you have a small brain.
Yeah.
I disagree, but I will say that small brain is the it does its job well of presenting that amazing head of hair.
Oh, thanks. Is it
The
framed the right way? Are you seeing it? I mean,
It is, yes, it's fantastic.
it looks a little bouffantish right now from what I'm
I,
seeing. There's almost a mullet developing, I think.
Knowing you though, Jeff, this is on purpose. So this is like classic. It's going to
You're
seem like I didn't do anything to get ready for this podcast when in reality you did. You want it to look exactly like this so that way you can say, "Oh, I
you are
just got
correct.
out of the gym, or I was raking leaves, or whatever you're doing." Oh, it's January 15th. You're not
You
raking leaves.
see through me, Tim, so deeply, so beautifully. It's amazing. You said Lindy Ruff is very much like that. I consider that a compliment, right? If Ruff, right, didn't you write about that? That, every single word he says, that there's thought. Is it something like that you said? There's thought
Yeah,
behind it.
yeah, yeah. I think he is a
Um,
master communicator, and he doesn't
yeah,
say things by accident. I don't know that I think he is cooler in that. I don't want. I'll quibble with the way you're paraphrasing, because I don't think he overthinks it. I don't think he prepares things to say. He's just so good at it that when the opportunity presents itself, every word has meaning and weight to it.
yeah,
So I don't think that he is, he tries to manipulate, or, that type of thing. Or
yeah.
I think he is naturally cool and just so good at it that he doesn't think about it much. And there's probably a doesn't give a fuck aspect to Lindy Ruff that allows that. There's no filter, so he doesn't have to think about it. There's really no filter. He's not an off the record guy. In fact, I a couple of times I
That's
asked him.
interesting. So Lindy's not an off the record guy.
No, there are times back when I was covering the
Interesting.
Sabres where I would say, hey, maybe you want to answer this off the record, but just from he always say nothing's off the record.
Oh,
Like
cool.
he's a man's communicate. It's like kind of, admirable. And I like to think that my interactions with him for those 7 years that I covered the Sabres kind of formed who I try to aspire to be. My dad was like that too. So
I like
there's,
that. I
there's
like
some
that a
weight there,
lot.
but the authenticity. And so it's just like be yourself
Yeah.
and not to be unapologetic, like an asshole about it, but to just kind of own your opinion, own your thought, make sure it's educated, make sure it's not, you're not just pulling it out of your ass. But if you feel, um, if you feel a certain way, then have some conviction about it.
Yep.
And, so anyways, but yeah, Lindy Rupp is very much like that. And I think Sean McDermott's kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes sense.
and you see it more and more as time goes on. He wasn't that way for, a few years as the head coach of the Bills, but how are you feeling about your Bills, Jeff, heading into the Broncos game? Hey, well, let's ask you. You're the guest. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the Bills, who are heading to Denver on Saturday for the second round of the NFL playoffs, or your Buffalo Sabres, who have won 14 of their past 16? They're in a wild card slot. You have the 05-06 reunion happening tonight at KeyBank Center against the Canadians, which I don't think matters. I don't recall the Canadians being one of those 05-06 big adversaries, but I guess that's coincidence. Anyway, where do you
Well,
want
you
to
had
start?
we've got two Sabres games in a row. You've got the reunion. Why don't we start with the Sabres?
Okay. They win last night 5-2, only 14 shots, but they score 5 goals against the Flyers.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, I
The
mean,
14 shots amazed me because every time I was watching closely, it seemed like they were all over them.
Jonah, what was
Every
it
time
like
I'm
there
looking,
last? You were at the arena last night. What was the vibe like? Some of the crowd shots were surprisingly thin, though, I thought.
The crowd was into it. I got there a little late because of some other things I had to take care of, and so the Sabres already had, a 2 goal lead going on, a 3 goal lead by the time I was in the building, but the crowd was into it. I think that Sabres were winning. They had the lead. This was an important game against a team they were tied with in the standings. It was not, I don't think it was a sellout, but it was rather close. And I think there's a buzz building for tonight that started with last night and really this homestand. And also coming off the loss, I think that the crowd was ready to try to cheer the team on and get them back in the winning slide and not go into this big evening on a losing streak.
Yeah, when I said a thin crowd, I think I'm recalling some crowd shots late in the game. The Sabres were already up, and the weather was
The
turning
weather.
last night really bad. I'm sure people wanted to get out of there and beat the weather. Um, so Jeff, I think probably the last time you were on, the Sabres were the biggest joke in the NHL, and now here they are, the hottest
yeah.
team in hockey.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the 05-06 team. I remember going back to Buffalo when they were in those years when they were what year did they win the President's Trophy?
06-07.
Okay. So it was the year before that and then that year. I remember every time I was back in Buffalo to visit my mom, it was, I mean, you just sent everywhere you went, you sensed the energy. You were covering the team, so you saw it up close. I mean, all the time, but it was amazing. But there's nothing like Buffalo when the Sabres are playing well. No shade to the Bills at all. You guys know how much I love the Bills, and but it's Buffalo is so beautiful when the Sabres are good, and it's fun.
Let's
Now I'm
explore
eating.
that a little bit because we are in a weird, we don't, it's funny in Buffalo sports history. Usually it's one or the other is good. They're never really great at the same time. But can we compare the excitement or electricity of Bills versus Sabres? And I know it's different because you have 41 home games during the regular season. It's a little bit more of a slower jog where every week is a sprint in the NFL, but the Sabres games are happening. You're right. There is an electricity. I dare say, even though in the arena is smaller, of course, a quarter of the size, But yeah, there is something to say. Like maybe Sabres fans are into their hockey team more than Bills fans are into their football team. Is that true? Do we think?
No, I don't think it's true. I don't know. I'd love to get Jonah's thoughts. It's different. And I would think if you asked most Buffalo fans if they'd rather have a Super Bowl or a Stanley Cup, they'd say Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just different. And maybe it's because they play more often. You got 2 or 3 games a week or whatever else, and so it's not just all geared up to one event on a Sunday, maybe even a Monday. And it just brings an energy to everything. I'm not describing this well, but
No,
it's
I would agree. I think it's different. There's a different energy. I mean, the Bandits have a different energy too. Different time of year and different sport and different playoff structure where I think sometimes I wouldn't say but the Sabres fans enjoy the hockey playoffs more than the Bills fans enjoy the football playoffs, but there's elements of it that are more enjoyable and it lasts longer and it's more of a month or 2 month long celebration than it is just 1 or 2 Sundays in the freezing cold. But look, and I think the Sabres fans are, they have a great fan base, an energetic fan base, and things like that. But, they play the Bill Shout song at the arena, and everybody's cheering louder than they do for any of the goals. And I don't think you'd ever get anything like that at the football stadium. They introduced the whole hockey team, and most people are saying, "Who are these guys?" I shouldn't say that, but there's more
Right.
leaning into that,
yeah.
way. There's just more football fans in the United States, and there's more football fans in Western New York than there are hockey fans.
The NFL is Buffalo's connection to the big time. Winnipeg has an NHL team. So there's just, it doesn't resonate, I think, in terms of relevance and the chip on the shoulder that Buffalo
Yeah.
has, the,
Yeah.
inferiority complex of, the weather and being made fun of and the 4 straight Super Bowls and losing them all and OJ and whatever else you want to throw in there. But as long as you have an NFL team, you are legit on the world stage, whereas the NHL doesn't do that. But yeah, the structure of those playoffs that you can go 7 games, the rivalry aspect of it, the weather is getting nicer, people, party in the plaza, it lends itself, maybe not to, tens of thousands of people tailgating in large parking lots in Orchard Park, but there seems to be, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to compare. Maybe you just can't do it. Like the tribalism that you have with the hockey fans and the Bills and football fans. Maybe they're too similar to really come up with a hard
Well, yeah, you
hard
I
mentioned
take.
with the
also think the thing
tribalism.
I
There's
like is
a
that I think the hockey community in general, no matter where you're talking about, wants Buffalo to succeed, wants the Sabres to succeed. They believe the NHL is a better league if Buffalo is a successful team. I think there are more Bills fans now than there were 20 years ago because of how well the team is playing and because of Josh Allen and everything else. But there's also a lot of haters who want to see the Bills fail. And I think, you know, I do think the Sabres have a lot of goodwill nationally. And not just nationally, not in the US, but Canada. Am I right in saying that? You
Yes, and
guys
I,
would
I
know
think
better.
that's something that helps the Sabres in their draw into Canada. But a lot of those Canadian fans are not Sabres fans; they're NHL fans or fans of the Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens or something like that. That helps the Sabres draw and sell tickets, but it doesn't really feed into the Sabres fan base. But the Sabres do have a very strong fan base in Buffalo, and they've certainly sold out plenty of games that were all Sabres fans and energetic. But it's different. There's a different passion. It's a smaller number of people, but I think people who are hockey fans and NHL fans have a strong, sometimes stronger uh, passion for the sport than the average football fan, because that's maybe watered down by the volume of football fans. But the Bills being Buffalo being the second smallest market in the NFL, that's always there, and that's always lingering over the football team and that inferiority complex. That's not really there with the Sabres, with the NHL. They're considered one of the not the bigger markets, but one of the stronger, better markets in hockey. And things like getting the draft here for a second time, the first Winter Classic being there. They're somewhat of a marquee franchise in the NHL, But then, Terry Pagula said something when they introduced the draft the other day. He said, I always consider Buffalo to be Canada South. And a lot of people from outside Buffalo will say that, but a lot of people in Buffalo don't really like identifying that way. And it is something that helps the Sabres overall in the NHL structure, but
Yeah.
isn't something that Buffalo fans are altogether proud of or want to hear said by the owner of one of their teams.
Not to make too controversial of a political point, but maybe being Canada South this in the year 2026 hits a little different than maybe 5 or 8 years ago.
Probably right.
I think, or maybe that there's some zooming in again, Jonah.
I know it's
It's
really
like and when that happens, I feel like
it hit me.
like Jonah's got a big point to make. Like they're zooming in on Jonah. I'm like, and I kind of wait the pregnant pause. Like, oh, what's he gonna say now? Oh, no, you just did it.
I
No, you
know
just
because I
zoomed in.
leaned back. Go away,
Right.
camera. Yeah, now it needs to readjust again. I really got to fix this thing. I am so sorry to everyone who's
That's all
watching
right.
for this.
Hey,
Um,
interesting crowd tonight, I think, because the Canadians generally will have a lot of fans in attendance at KeyBank Center. But you have this game, the 05-06 reunion, but it was announced when the Sabres weren't playing that well. This was not a hot ticket when this reunion was put together. The Sabres were considered awful, whatever it was, a couple of months ago. It'll be interesting to see how many people, what the breakdown is, what the
yeah,
partisanship is in the stands tonight.
Canadians are good too. I was looking
Thanks,
at their
Jeff.
stats last night. I was trying to figure out why they're good, but they are. I
Jonah,
used
you're
to
gonna.
go, the
Oh,
best ones were always, and I'm sure I would think it's still the same way, but I remember going to Maple Leafs games as a kid when they played the Sabres at the Odd. Those were awesome.
Leafs, Canadians, the Rangers get a good crowd. There are a lot of Rangers
Interesting.
fans that come to Sabres games still. And is that it? What are the other ones that you'd have to be mindful of? That's
Bruins.
the
I think
Bruins,
all of
yeah,
the teams in the
Bruins,
Northeast
yeah.
and
yeah.
Eastern Canada.
Penguins,
So
I think.
Jonah will report the partisanship breakdown. He will post in the comments section underneath Tim Graham and Friends what the breakdown is when he's at the game tonight. Do you
It's
have a favorite
supposedly a hot ticket
05-06?
tonight.
I'm sorry.
It's a hot ticket tonight, from what I understand.
What are the prices for tickets now, like versus what they were at the beginning of the year when things were starting slow? Does anybody have any idea?
I don't think they've changed too much, except for, a game like tonight or a weekend game that's, considered an attractive event to attend because, they've been getting about 16,000 for the last two home games. So it's still getting in or getting a ticket on the secondary market. I don't think the dynamics of that have changed very much.
Yeah.
Hard to get a ticket in Denver, and I think that we've been seeing some of the stories from ticket brokers on the local news regarding the supply just isn't there, and the demand is high, but Broncos fans are not selling their tickets. They did not play last week. They are the number one seed. All the things. Sean Payton has the fan base excited, and Bo Nix is their franchise quarterback. So I kept waiting all week for Southwest or United to add direct flights, which they normally do, but I think the demand wasn't there because fans can't make the trip. There's no ticket to be had at the end of the line, and also the fares are pretty high to begin with. 700. I think my flight's 850 or $900 round trip. So anyway,
Well,
no direct flights were added this week.
flying first class though increases the price for your tickets too, Tim, and with the foot massages and I don't know
That
what else you demand.
there are certain musts. There are some non-negotiable
I agree. Yeah.
travel uh, rules
You
that
need
I
it.
have.
You need it. You have a rider. It's weed out the yellow M&Ms and it's just the orange and red ones. Um, I
By the way,
yeah,
speaking of first class, Stephen Colbert does the Colbert questionnaire
Yeah.
with major celebrities. And one of the, and it's, if you're familiar with the show, whatever, I don't have to get into it, but he asks it's the same. And one of the questions he always asks is window or aisle. And inevitably they say window, but that's bullshit because these are A-list celebrities. They are flying first class. Of course you want the window because you're further away from the aisle. You have all the room you need. If you're flying in coach, you're not picking the window. It's aisle all the way, right?
I never take the window. It's always aisle.
It screws up the question that he's asking as somebody who is clearly in first class. Of course you'd
You
want the
should
window.
tell him.
I will the next time I see him.
Yeah.
I've had Maury Povich on this show. I think I can get Stephen
Oh
Colbert.
my, Maury.
All right, your thoughts on the Broncos, Jeff? How much do they scare you?
They scare me less than the Jag. I mean, the Broncos aren't going to use this for bulletin board, but they scare me less. I was worried about the Jaguars game. We talked about this before. You picked the Jags, didn't you?
I did. I picked the
Uh,
exact score, but the other way.
oh, okay.
In the
Um,
ballpark.
I yeah, I think that I mean I'm confident about it. I feel better about this than I would about whatever the AFC Championship game would be, whether it would be Texans or New England in on the road.
I am picking the Bills to win against all these opponents except Houston. And I mean, obviously there's only three opponents left, but I said that heading into, whoever would have won the other games. But Jacksonville was really the only Jacksonville and Houston, I guess, were the only two but now, the matchups, the different props that are out there based on the matchups, the Bills at best are just a pick. I think
Yeah.
against they're a pick against New England, and I think they'd be an underdog against Houston if it comes to that.
Is that right?
And they were a 1.5 favorite when the line opened against Denver, but now the Broncos, last I saw, were a 1.5 favorite. So the money is coming in on the Broncos.
I think yeah, I mean I guess it's making a pick. Houston scares me. Uh because remember the 85 Bears and whatever the 2000 was it Ravens and maybe like the 2000 am I getting this right like the 2001 Bucks like these teams that had unbelievable defenses and marginal offenses and still won a Super Bowl. Houston seems like that's what it is.
Well, the 85 Bears did have great, they had Walter Payton and Willie Galt, and Jim McMahon was pretty good. Um,
This
not
Glor idiot just called Walter Payton marginal.
Well, I think maybe the Ravens, the 2000 Ravens with Ray Lewis and
Yeah.
that defensive, they had nothing going for them on offense. I don't know. Did they have Jamal Lewis back then? Now you're making me look shit up, Jeff. All right. So anyway, Denver has the number one defense in the NFL. Well, I guess they're the number one
Wasn't it
defense in the
Cleveland?
AFC. Seattle's up there too.
Yeah, I thought it was Cleveland, but maybe I'm wrong.
That was last year.
No, I thought Cleveland was number one overall this year.
In defense,
Yeah.
well, I guess let's see what we got. Yards per play. Broncos have the best 4.5 yards per play is all that they give up.
No, you got
Cleveland
to go to
is
total yards given up for the whole game.
yards for the whole game.
Total team defense.
Houston is first.
Houston. Okay.
Denver is second. Cleveland is fourth.
All right.
And then yeah. And then Denver is second in yards per carry and yards per pass attempt. And they lead the NFL in sacks. Josh Allen has been getting beaten up, and his receivers can't get separation, and they keep falling into the ditch and can't get back out of it, like the lady in the Life Alert commercial. And yeah, they're starting to look like the printer in Office Space, the Bills receivers group. Do you know that
Still have,
reference? Where
yes.
they take the printer out into the field and beat the hell out of it.
Still have Shakir. Still have Kincaid. Still have Knox. I think we're gonna win. I do. Why did your eyes just bug out there?
Well, the idea of Knox, who's been a revelation, well, can you be a revelation when you've been in the league this long? He's kind of saved him. I mean, if without Dawson Knox of all people, where would
Hmm.
Josh Allen be throwing his touchdown passes to over the
I
last,
don't know.
let's say, month and a half? I mean, Dalton Kincaid's been hurt. All the receivers can't either stay on the field because they're hurt or can't get to their meetings on time. Healthy scratches, injuries all over the place, and Dawson Knox is the guy who comes up big. And are you nervous? And could you have fathomed being nervous about not having 43-year-old Jordan Poyer in this game? He seemed washed up 2 years ago. His last year with the Bills was a rough
He
one. Now
was,
he was hurt a lot, and then he goes to
yeah,
Miami and had an even worse season there. And so when the Bills signed him, it was clear it was like, well, this is like Micah Hyde. He's on the practice squad, and we're just going to
yeah.
have him around to coach these youngsters. And then lo and behold, a few weeks into the season, he's playing at such an amazing level. And without him, where would the Bills defense be? So it's just kind of funny that, and Tre'Davious White and Shaq Thompson. Like all these
Amazing.
guys were afterthoughts, and
Yep.
now they're pivotal parts of the defense.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Good for Poyer. I mean, I know he's not going to play this weekend. Bummed about Hairston. Good for Trey. Milano, I mean, I know he took some heat earlier in the year, but he seems pretty important right now,
Yeah,
don't
especially
you
with
think?
Terrell Bernard unable to get on the field. Shaq Thompson has actually been seems like a little bit of an upgrade over Terrell Bernard because when Bernard's been on the field, he's been clearly limited by his injuries and kind of deficient. So Shaq Thompson is big role there. Jono, do you make a prediction anywhere on your various
Uh,
Bronstein Sports
I don't
Plus
make
platforms?
any official predictions. I think the Bills are very capable of winning this game and can win this game, but I would pick against the Bills. And I think that I disagree when the Bills were initially favored or the confidence that I sense from Bills fans that there seems to be this snowball effect that because they won last week, this game is going to be easier or they proved how good they are or that Josh Allen beat Trevor Lawrence, so now he's going to beat every other quarterback, and that's not really how the game is played. I think this is going to be a tougher game and a tougher situation for the Bills. The combination of the short week, the traveling multiple weeks in a row, the altitude, the injury toll around the team, and not just the players who are out, but the number of players who are questionable or have limited in practice or playing through injuries, which include Dalton Kincaid and Matt Milano has been limited all week with an ankle injury. Guys that are going to play but might not be at their best. And Denver having the week off and 2 weeks to prepare, and Sean Payton being 4-0 in the playoffs, coming off a bye with a two-touchdown spread. And I don't think it helps the Bills that this is the team they beat in the playoffs last year. I think Denver's had a whole year
Yeah.
and now this week to kind of use that as motivation. And they said coming out of that game, we need to get this game at home next year. That game last year was closer than the score indicates, and now being in Denver and Denver being a better team than they were a year ago, it kind of helps them. I think all of those on their own are marginal things that the Bills can overcome, but putting that all together, I think makes it an uphill climb for the Bills to win this game. Josh Allen's injury is not going to keep him from playing, probably not going to keep him from playing well, but it might affect him in some little ways, combined with fatigue and altitude, the pass rush, and taking more hits to where uh, I think the Bills' run ends here in Denver. I'm not counting them out. I absolutely think that they can surprise us here. And there's different X and O matchup things that favor the Bills that maybe will somehow make this more winnable in those matchups than some of the things like Jacksonville's run defense that was a poor matchup for the Bills.
The
Jonah,
altitude is real.
Jonah
Um,
was on a roll there.
he was. How do you feel about the Bills' chances now, Jeff, compared to about 6 minutes ago?
I'm dismissing everything Jonah just said completely with prejudice. Um, I think we're going to win this weekend. I say we, the Bills. Sorry.
Thank you for
Uh,
correcting yourself before I
Well,
had a
let me
I,
ask
chance
you
to
this.
do it.
I'm curious
yes.
why are Bills fans so much more confident going into this game against the number one seed coming off a bye than a week ago against Jacksonville, that I think was a more vulnerable team?
Why? Because Jacksonville had won eight in a row. They were very hot. They were the hottest team in football. Trevor Lawrence was playing well. The Broncos have I don't know how many one-score victories. They're like the Chiefs of last year, where every time the game was close, they won it. And so I think a lot of people see them as a weak number one seed. I don't think you disagree. They're not an overpowering number one seed. And I think some of our strengths playing to this game, there's the weight on the offensive line and defensive line. That differential. I, listen, the the way they get to the quarterback scares me. Sure, of course, with Josh banged up a little bit, but I don't think they don't have a stud running back. If they got a pass, our pass defense is deep. The Bills' pass defense is decent. Uh, um, and it's conditioning, Tim. So I don't know. I feel much better about this one.
I
And you're
think
outvoted.
that
You're outvoted, by the way, Jonah. Tim's picking the Bills as well.
I'll say this. I was, picking against the Bills all week, but then I saw a clip of Von Miller picking the Broncos to win by 10. So that swayed my opinion because I don't know if Von Miller's ever been right in any one of his predictions, at least since he came to the Bills.
Well, that means
yeah,
it's going to be Bills by 10.
Right, right. That's, made me doubt my analysis.
I think that Bills fans are also feeling better about this one because of all the angst that they had going into the first round game. I don't know that it would have mattered if it was Jacksonville or maybe anybody but Pittsburgh, um, who limped into the playoffs and barely made it. But even if Baltimore had won the AFC North, I think Bills fans were going to be nervous because of all the deficiencies of the previous 3 months. Wide receivers not competing, different injuries, linebacker problems. There are all kinds of apprehension. There was angst. And going up against Jacksonville, you actually got to see all the things that you feared might happen not come true. So Josh Allen was Superman Josh Allen. And even without James Cook, they were able to find, Dalton Kincaid catches a touchdown pass. The defense makes the big play. And so now there's a fresh vision in a Bills fan's mind of all the things we were really bracing ourselves for didn't happen. And now, therefore, they can imagine it not happening. Like maybe they can survive this. And so I think that it comes mostly from having their concerns allayed for those 3 hours last Sunday afternoon in Jacksonville.
But as impressive and as tough as the Bills were in pulling out that game and coming back, it was a very close game and a game that
Yeah.
seemed to be getting away from the Bills at times in
Yeah,
the second
yeah,
half. And you're
yeah.
talking about, Trevor Lawrence's shin being on the ground with the ball an inch away from the first down line. Jacksonville maybe, and I don't want to say they should have kicked the field goal, but could have kicked the field goal there in that situation, and that might have changed the flow of the game. The field goal
Mhm.
that they missed, I know, Bills fans will say that they shouldn't have been able to attempt that kick, but if that kick goes in, that can change the result. And the Bills still needed that, make that defensive play, which was a great play by Tre'Davious White. But if they don't make that play and Jacksonville moves the ball down the field, maybe they kick a field goal there and it goes into overtime. It was a very, very close game, and the Bills won by a very narrow, just making one or two extra plays. And as tremendous as Josh Allen was, and as great as Tre'Davious White stepped up and all the different plays, Tyrell Shavers playing on a torn ACL in the second half. That's going to go down in Bills lore, I think, as something like that. And it took all of that just to win by a hair in Jacksonville. And I think this game's going to be tougher. So the Bills are going to have to do even more with less, with the injuries that occurred and some players playing hurt on a short week out there. And it just seems like I think the Bills can really make this a game, but I think it's going to take a lot more for them to actually win and move on to the next round.
It was fourth down on that tush push. A lot of people were so blown away by the tush push. Now they were probably going to get it because it was fourth and actually less than a yard. But for the Bills to be on fourth down 4 points, the field goal was going to do them no good. That's how close that game really was.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonah, you just laid out a bunch of them. I'm just adding one more feather in the nest. But yeah,
Well,
that game,
Prater making his 50-yarder with his injury and at his age, which is great for him, but that's also, not lucky, but fortunate that the Bills didn't have the kicker situation work against them the way we all thought it might.
right?
Can Jonah talks about all the things that went their way. I thought the biggest play of the game, other than at the very end, was that catch, which was called a non-catch by Cooks at the end of the first half. Okay, the Bills were up by 3 at that point, right?
They
I
were
don't have
winning,
And
my
yeah,
game
yeah.
book here with me, but
I have no idea. So that was called a
yeah, they
catch on
were
the field. It
the
looked
Bills
like
were.
a catch.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Bills were they were what, the 50-yard line or somewhere around there. It was like a 30-yard pass to Cooks that was called a catch on the field and then was inexplicably overruled and changed with I didn't think evidence to support that. That would have been so then they would have had the ball what with like a minute and a half left or something on the I don't know 20-15 yard line. You score a touchdown there, you go up by 10 points. I think that totally changes the game. And I that was
Yeah. I
The
mean, I think the Bills
officiating
won the
was not
first half.
great.
They were the better team in the first half, but it seemed to slip away from them in the third quarter and going into the fourth quarter until Josh
yeah,
Allen first fourth quarter comeback in the playoffs his career. I mean, he was tremendous,
yeah.
but it took that. It took him being tremendous and better in the fourth quarter than he's really ever been before to get that win.
Jeff, thanks for joining us. I know you have things that you need to do today. You are not unemployed. A lot of people think you are, but you're not. Um, so I know that you have things to do. You have some editing. You are a father. Mabel might need to go take a whiz. There's all kinds of things happening at Glor Central Station that need your attention. So thank you for joining us.
You know, every time I see a fancy sports car that I don't recognize in the parking lot at WIVB, I get a little skip in my step thinking I'm going to walk in there and see Jeff Glor,
Oh,
and then I get disappointed when it's someone else.
well, you could put up like a picture there or something. I don't
Your
know.
picture was up in the hallways for a long time. I don't know if it's there anymore, but it
I
was for a very long time.
It was replaced by Nora O'Donnell. And you can recall, I did take my picture. I had a selfie
I
with
think
Jeff
you
Glor.
did. Yes, I
You
think
got
you
the
did.
pen. Does this look familiar? Something like this? Like there's a pen involved, I think, leaning forward on the
Yes.
anchor desk.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, those
And
staging those like those photos is always, you know, and they've got 65 different people looking at it and weighing in and saying this is the best one. And I'm like, okay, just whatever. Um, yeah, man, thanks. It was fun. It's gonna be a fun weekend. Gonna be fun tonight with the Sabres.
yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch. I was debating whether to go to the game. I actually have to write a story about the Bills safeties and Sean Payton going up against the Bills safeties. I spoke with Ron Rivera, who is an NFC South um, rival of Sean Payton, how he thinks that Payton is going to attack the Bills back there, and Jarris Bird, who played for Sean Payton in New Orleans briefly, and then was played the position so well for the Bills all those years. Um, Jarris Bird thinks he's really concerned about the altitude. He thinks that's a real thing. Like that, Josh Allen made it a point to say it is a concern, but we can't talk about it. Like we don't want to get in our own heads about the altitude.
Yeah.
And
Josh
Jarris
Allen
Bird, he,
sounded concerned as much as he tends to let on in those kind of settings. He did not try to project unconcerned.
yeah, that's true. But they have so many other things to worry about that if that's in the back of your mind. But you know that the Broncos have that on their helmets. You actually see it. 5280 is on the Broncos helmets. So that
Yep.
way you're
Yep.
reminded.
Deion Dawkins was interesting talking about that yesterday. He says they have an altitude and oxygen deprivation mask that the players can wear, and they've been running on the treadmill, and that he doesn't normally run on the treadmill during the week, but he's been doing that, so they are preparing for it. But that was also the opposite of what Josh Allen said. It did seem very much in
Mm.
Deion Dawkins' head and other players' head, and they are preparing for it. But I guess you do have to prepare for it. But from what I understand, you can't acclimate to playing an NFL football game in that altitude just by running on a treadmill with a mask on for 1 week. I mean, it just doesn't happen that way.
That was always you don't hear about it as much anymore because sports science being what it is, but there were the coaches that would always debate, do you go out there a few days early? to get acclimated. And that was always a big conversation in Cleveland
Yeah.
because they would inevitably be a Bernie Kosar versus John Elway game at Mile High Stadium. Anyways, Jeff,
Well,
you got
and
things
I
to
know
do.
you just got to go, but another one of those marginal things. I mean, traveling on an airplane for 3.5 hours the day before, that's altitude, and that does something to your body. And doing that on a short week after having plane rides the week before, and that adding up
No
with
day off this
the
week, really.
altitude.
You know, you don't have that normal Tuesday routine that you have as a player of resting up, and they had to go right from, getting in on late Sunday night to a walkthrough on Tuesday instead of a day
Yeah.
off. Jeff, thank you. And thank
Yeah,
you,
man.
Jonah. Thanks to everybody out there for listening and for watching Tim Graham and Friends, and grateful for your support in the all the things that you can do on your platform. Please continue to do that. Like, subscribe, comment, rate, whatever. Print it out, print out the podcast and frame it, put it on your refrigerator.